to another As Medicine Lunch and Learn session sponsored by Douglas Public Health Network and Thrive Umpqua. My name is Vanessa Becker, and I am from Douglas Public Health Network, and I'm joined by several of our team members at DPHN and Thrive Umpqua today to host today's webinar. We're very excited to welcome Dr. Jade Wu to talk about her body of work and research in things related to sleep. I'm going to go over a few just quick logistics first, as we normally do, and then I'll read a bio from Dr. Wu and hand it over to her. So a few logistics. This is only being recorded for people who've registered for the webinar, and we ask that you do not record this on your own. If you prefer to read closed captions, please click on the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen that says Show Captions. Your mics and cameras will be turned off during the webinar, so please use the chat function for questions and put those in the chat. And then also, if you are at a watch party, let us know if you are where you're watching from, and put that in the chat. That would be helpful. A friendly reminder to check our DPHN website for upcoming Lunch and Learns. We have one coming in April, and I'll announce that topic at the end of this one. We'll be drawing winners for Dr. Wu's book, Hello Sleep, after the webinar. So watch your email in the next few days to see if you're a winner of one of her great books. A special shout out to Thrive Umpqua and DPHN for sponsoring this series. And without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Jade Wu. Dr. Jade Wu is a board certified sleep psychologist on a mission to spread the gift of sleep. She completed her PhD at Boston University and her behavioral medicine residency and fellowship at Duke University School of Medicine. After conducting research and serving as a clinical faculty at Duke, she founded the Thrive Clinic, where she uses evidence-based methods and a collaborative approach to help people sleep and live well. She also regularly appears in print media such as the New York Times and HuffPost, as well as on radio and TV programs such as NPR and ABC News, to share mental health insights with the public. Dr. Wu is the author of Hello Sleep, The Science and Art of Overcoming Insomnia Without Medications. And at home, she loves to nap and play with her kids in that order. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Wu. I hand it off to you.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Vanessa. And it's great to be with all of you today. So I'm seeing folks in watch parties from Rosebud, Oregon, and I know there are people logging in from their computers. I always especially love talking to a rural audience because this is just like such a beautiful way to bring us all together, right? And I myself live in a small town in upstate New York, so I am really happy. We are here to talk about sleep as medicine. And specifically, my message today is to invite you to fall in love with sleep. So you'll see throughout the talk why this is not called 3 top gadgets for better sleep or 5 steps to perfect sleep hygiene. This is about falling in love with sleep. And so I hope that intrigues you a little bit because it's a slightly different message than you probably usually hear. Now, as I go through, I would love for you to type into the chat your questions, your comments, just something that you want to shout out to the group. Please do participate. And I am going to start with a couple of polls. So please do participate and type in your answer to the chat. I have it open right in front of me, so I'll be able to see your answers. All right, without further ado, meet Marcy. Marcy is a woman in her 40s. She is a professional with a successful career. She has a family that she loves. She has a historical reputation for being the life of the party, but not so much recently. Recently, in the past 3 or so years, she says that a nighttime demon had been stealing her energy and sapping her soul. What does she mean by that? Well, she explains that every night she put her kids to bed, do some chores, watch some TV, start to doze off on the couch a little bit. But then as soon as she takes herself up to bed, as soon as her head hits that pillow, something just switches her brain on. Her mind just starts to race and race about work, about the news, about that one awkward thing she said to what's her face that one time. And she is begging her brain to shut up. She's threatening it, bargaining with it, but whatever she does, it just makes her more amped up. Eventually, she doze off, only to wake up a couple hours later to struggle all over again and again until her alarm clock shoves her into yet another day that starts with exhaustion. Poor Marcy has chronic insomnia. Now, she didn't always. In her 20s, she kind of took sleep for granted because sleep was so easy. She could fall asleep anywhere, anytime. She could sort of pull all-nighters to do work or to party, and she would recover just fine. It was just not a big deal. She knew that she knew that this was probably not the best way to approach sleep for her health, but she figured eventually she would feel ready to settle down and take sleep more seriously. And that day came. That day came when she got more responsibilities at work after a promotion, and her job became more interesting but also more stressful. That day came when her mother developed a cognitive decline and she had to become a part-time caregiver. That day came when she herself started to go through perimenopause. Through all of these life's curveballs, she experienced disruption to her sleep, right? Hormonal disruption, lifestyle disruption, stress, more things on her mind. One of these things threw a wrench in her easy sleep, and she found her sleep kind of deteriorating over time. And then so she started to double down on her sleep hygiene. She would get fancier gadgets to measure her sleep. She would get better blackout curtains and a Himalayan salt lamp, and she would get special music and sound machines to listen to, and she would go to bed at the same time every night. But even with all of these changes to her sleep hygiene that she's really trying to optimize here, somehow sleep just kept getting worse. Why? So don't worry, we'll come back to Marcy. We're going to help her out today, okay? But let's take just a little break from Marcy's story because I want to come to you and ask about your relationship with sleep. So up here, I'm going to show you a couple of options, three options for common types of approaches to sleep that I see. And I'm curious to see which one resonates with you the most. So type it into the chat, A, B, or C, which one resonates. Okay. So A, this is like Marcy 20 years ago. I'll deal with taking care of my sleep later, after this promotion, after my kids are older, after I retire, after this season is over. Meanwhile, YOLO, for those of you who are maybe not millennials, YOLO means you only live once. Basically, it's a shorthand for people who want to say, forget responsibility, forget what I ought to do. I'm just going to do impulsively what I want to do most. So when it comes to sleep, often sleep kind of falls to the bottom of that pile, right? So are you more like Marcy 20 years ago and you kind of deprioritize sleep? Or are you more like what Marcy aspires to be today, where you work hard to optimize your sleep so it can give you better performance, better functioning during the day? Maybe you measure your sleep. Maybe you follow sleep hygiene rules closely. Maybe you read lots of articles to try to understand sleep better so that you can do it better. Or are you like, see, somewhere in between? My sleep's not perfect, but that's okay. I'll pay attention and be open to change. Okay, so I see that Danielle has already raised her hand for B. Bernadette says B a lot of times. Okay, yeah. So, okay, we have a couple of C's as well, and an A in there. Okay, so smattering of B, sleep schedule a must, B, C's. Yeah, so we have, a range of different responses here. Okay, Louise really thinks C is a good answer. Um, so let's see. I can now view everyone's input. Okay, great. Now I'm seeing even more answers roll in. Yeah, so it seems like we have, a lot of people saying C, but we also have a good smattering of A's and B's here. So people who are maybe uh neglecting sleep a little bit, working really hard on sleep, or somewhere in the middle. All right, great, great. Thank you very much for writing your answers. Oh, Vanessa says I was a B before I read your book. So that's a good foreshadowing for what I'm about to say, right? All right, so humor me. Now we're going to set aside sleep for just a moment and bring to mind instead a person in your life that you care about. whether that's a partner, a child, your best friend, your parent, someone that you really care about and whose company you enjoy. Okay, so imagine their loving and trusting face looking at you. All right, so now we're going to do this poll again, but it's going to be about the person that you're thinking of. So, are you approaching your relationship with this person this way? Either A, oh, I'll deal with taking care of that relationship later. After I get this promotion, after the kids get older, I'll call my parents, later once I've gone through this busy season at work. I'll, go to my kid's soccer game after I get this promotion. Is it like that? Or do you approach your relationship like B, I work hard at optimizing my partner or my child or my, whoever, so that she can help me achieve better performance? So maybe I monitor her behaviors, I measure her performance, I analyze whether she's, measuring up to my metrics, and making sure that she's, following my rules, my way or the highway, all for my benefit, or we're not perfect, but that's okay. I'll keep communicating with this person that I love and be open to change. All right, so what do we all think of how we approach our relationship or how we want to approach our relationship with that person? Okay, so lots of C's rolling in. In fact, I'm seeing like 100% answer C from folks writing in. So that's interesting. Nobody wants to be neglecting their relationship with their best friend. Striving for C in all relationships from Paul. Yeah, yeah. Even if we're not quite there yet, we intuitively know that C is kind of the right answer, right? That we need to be appreciative and fair, attentive, but not overbearing. That's like an easy intuition for us to hold about our human relationships. But how come when it comes to sleep, it's much more tempting to err towards the neglectful or the overbearing? Even for those of you who answer C for sleep, were there times in your life, or are there still some times in your life when sleep does end up being the bottom of the priority pile, or you worry about it so much that you sort of really home in on it for a while and really work hard at it? I myself find that I'm tempted to um, be pulled in those directions. And, for good reason too, because it is important, right? We're all here at this talk because we know sleep is important, but it's also kind of an intimidating engineering project to take on if we need to be perfect about our sleep hygiene, if we need to work hard at figuring out the right algorithm for our sleep, right? So keeping all that in mind, I want to show you something interesting. Just food for thought. That if you live to be 100 years old, you will have spent 30 years one-on-one with sleep. 30 years, not just in the same relationship, but 30 years in the same room with sleep. Do you have a friend that you're that close with? Do you have an older friend than that? So if sleep is something that we spend so much time with and that is so consistently present in our life, what kind of relationship do we want to have with it? And by the way, this sleep roommate that you have is not just some scrub, loser roommate that you have to put up with that's leeching off of you. This friend is actually your most loyal and oldest friend, and she's kind of a magician because this is what she does. She actually helps you to clean your brain at night. While you're sleeping, your brain is actively flushing out toxins from your brain that build up during the day. These toxins are the precursors that, you know, may not necessarily turn into the disease that we see in Alzheimer's disease, but these are material or precursors that, if accumulating too much, could increase our risk for dementia. When we sleep, your friend's sleep is actually doing janitorial work to flush those out. Your friend is also helping you enhance your performance in all kinds of ways, whether it's with work, with decision making, with even just day to day, remembering things you ought to remember, having sound judgment, reacting quickly to situations that you need to be aware of. All of these basic cognitive tasks and physical tasks we do, sleep makes you stronger and faster and better at those things. Of course, it also heals your body. When you're injured or if you're fighting an infection, sleep is helping by really beefing up your immune system and also sending out growth hormones to help you repair muscles and to, if you happen to be going through puberty, which I think probably most people on this call are not, but that's, something that your brain is helping, the teenagers, the adolescents in your life do. It also does some nighttime therapy for you. It helps to smooth out those edges from those intense emotions or strong reactions to help you put things in context, to help you be more mindful in how you react to situations. And it sorts through emotions and tags them with just how important they are, sorts out the memories associated with those emotions, just to help you really stay organized in what's important to have an emotional reaction about. All right. And creativity. I mean, creativity is really just putting two things together that usually don't go together in a useful way, right? And what is the brain doing while you're sleeping? The firing rate is slowing down, but it's also syncing up across different parts of the brain. So a really interesting, a unique pattern of brain activity happens during the brain or during sleep, such that, different parts of your brain, different neurons that usually don't fire together are firing together. So that's why you get creative and bizarre dreams sometimes. Sometimes you might even wake up with a eureka moment after pondering a problem for a long time. You might actually wake up and realize, oh, there are connections between these two things I never thought of before. And of course, sleep helps you to level up your skills. So if you learn how to play pickleball during the day or learn how to, play a piano scale, and then you have a good night's sleep, you will wake up better at those skills than when you went to bed because your brain is actually practicing while you're sleeping. So, I mean, given all of these amazing things that your brain does for you during sleep, no wonder we all know that sleep is important, right? So, even if you already knew about some of these or all of these, it's just amazing to see it all together because these are not just separate tasks that sleep is doing for you. All of these things together make up who you are as a person because, for example, I don't know about you, but the difference between me being well rested recently versus not well rested recently is the difference between me laughing with my kids versus snapping at my kids when they do something like, unravel a whole two rolls of toilet paper all over the bathroom, right? So, how you approach the world, how you show up in the world is very much influenced by how well you're sleeping. So no wonder you're either working hard on this as an engineering problem, or you're maybe seeing this as too overwhelming, too big of a task to tackle and kicking that can down the road. All so far, maybe it's working pretty well. You do function, right? Even if you don't have a sleep disorder or insomnia. But then what happens if the sleep medication that you're taking doesn't work anymore because you gain tolerance? Or your PCP doesn't prescribe that medication for you anymore because now you're 65 and they're worried about fall risk or dementia risk from those medications. What are you going to do then? Or what if the melatonin you're taking is actually making you more groggy in the mornings? Or what if life throws you a curveball and you're going through a period of stress with your family? Or, your financial future feels more uncertain because, the stock market is up and down and your 401k is doing kind of scary bumps, week to week. Or, is AI going to take my job, right? These are things that, of course, are going to introduce disruption and stress into our lives. And when these disruptions happen, are your blackout curtain and sound machine really going to cut it? And now that your sleep tracker is showing you bad scores, about your sleep and bad readiness scores every morning, how exactly does that information help you? Or does it just make you more anxious? So that's why we're not here to talk about three best products for sleep or five, sleep hygiene tips you must do, because sleep hygiene and sleep products, they're kind of like dental hygiene and dental products. Once you already have a cavity, no amount of brushing with your top of the line toothbrush is going to get rid of that cavity, right? In fact, when we do our clinical trials for insomnia, when we test an intervention, a treatment for insomnia, we compare it to a placebo condition. And that placebo condition that we don't expect to work is usually sleep hygiene. That's right. We use sleep hygiene literally as the sugar pill equivalent in our trials because we do not expect it to work when you already have insomnia. So, what is the real problem? Why does sleep hygiene not address the root issue? Well, the root issue is this. It's that we forego the true understanding of our unique and dynamic sleep patterns. And instead, we rely on these superficial, rigid, one-size-fits-all solutions like sleep hygiene tips and, using gadgets. And that ultimately strains our relationship with sleep and actually makes our sleep worse. Or even if it doesn't make it worse today, tonight, it makes our sleep more fragile and less resistant or less resilient to change and stress. So here's what I propose instead. Instead of saying that the secret to health and well-being is to optimize your sleep hygiene, I'm going to propose today that the secret to health and well-being is to nurture a great relationship with sleep. To nurture a great relationship with sleep. So what does that mean? Well, let's come back to Marcy and look at what she's already been doing and maybe what she could do instead. So Marcy thought, okay, I'm a pretty motivated person. I'm very analytical and I'm pretty good at getting things done if I put my mind to it, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to really focus on sleep right now and turn that ship around. So I'm going to give myself some new sleep rules. Oh, whoops. I'm going to say no screens after dinner, 9:30 bedtime, no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm going to really lock down evenings by minimizing fluid intake, decreasing stress levels, nothing stimulating at all. I'm going to cancel my Thursday salsa dancing until my sleep is back on track. Keep my bedroom to exactly 67 degrees because that's what someone said on a podcast once. Research shows that's a perfect temperature for sleep. And of course, I'm going to analyze my Fitbit data every morning to see what I did wrong and why my sleep is so bad. So, in other words, kind of an intensified version of sleep hygiene rules. Uh, but what happens when Marcy actually tries this? Unfortunately, Marcy is finding out the hard way why sleep hygiene is not the answer because she's finding herself more and more anxious as she approaches bedtime. Whenever she wakes up during the night, she starts doing mental math about how much sleep she's going to get if she falls asleep within the next 15 minutes. Okay, but that didn't happen. So what if I fall asleep within the next 30 minutes? Then I'll have 5 more hours. But what if I wake up again? Then that's going to be only 4.5 hours. And that's less than last night's sleep. And she starts to doing that sleep math, right? And she's exhausted from all this strategizing and thinking, and she's cranky because she hasn't had fun with her friends in a while. And she's just obsessively thinking about what she should and shouldn't do during the day because everything is about sleep now. So she went too far in that overbearing direction. What should Marcy do instead? Well, here's the point in the talk where I switch over my evangelist hat over to my coaching kind of tactics hat because we're going to get down to specific concrete tactics. All right, ready? The first bucket of tactics is called get to know your sleep because to be a good friend to sleep, we have to get to know it, right? And each of us have a unique sleep friend, sleep buddy that we need to get to know. For example, how much sleep do you really need? Now, I'm sure the number 8 hours pops into your head because this is the most popularized number about sleep that's out there in the headlines, right? But I mean, Michael Phelps ate 12,000 calories during peak Olympic training season. Should we all eat 12,000 calories a day? Maybe, but probably not. It's the same thing with sleep. We all have our unique patterns and needs depending on a lot of things like our age, our lifestyle, our genetics. And this changes not, and this is not just different between you and me, but it changes over the course of our life and even changes from season to season, week to week, even night to night. So then, how do we figure out how much sleep we need tonight or how much sleep we need at this stage in our life? Here's a simple 3-step plan. The first step is to set an anchor in your 24-hour rhythm. And that's to get up at about the same time every day, including weekends, including your days off. And, sometimes that's not totally possible, and that's okay. We don't have to be really perfect about this. Let's say an hour's wiggle room. So if you usually get up at 7 a.m. on weekdays for work, but you like to sleep in a little until 8 a.m. on weekends, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so now that you're holding the morning time, wake up time steady, the second part is also equally important, and that's to go to bed when sleepy, not before. And the key word here is sleepy, not tired, because those two are very different things. Sleepy is when you're about to fall asleep. And tired instead is about, oh, I've had a long day. I have no more energy. I really don't want to deal with anybody or anything anymore. I just want to relax and I want to chill in my bed and, relax. The reason the difference between tired and sleepy is so important is that if you're feeling sleepy, you should go to bed. That's your body telling you you need sleep. Great. But if you're just feeling tired and not sleepy and you go to bed, you're just going to be tired but wired in bed. You're going to be frustrated and, racing with a racing mind. You're going to be, trying to get comfortable. You realize you need to get up and go use the bathroom again. It feels like it's the racing mind and the using the bathroom that's keeping you up. But really, what's keeping you up is the fact that you're not sleepy. And then there's suddenly a vacuum in your mind that needs to be filled. And what fills it is all your to-do lists and your worries and your random thoughts, the jingle from like 1970, a commercial that for some reason you still remember. And that's why you have a racing mind. So tired versus sleepy, important difference. Go to bed when you're sleepy, not necessarily when you're tired. Okay. And step 3, this is the easy part. Once you do step 1 and step 2 consistently, step 3 is just sitting back and relaxing and letting your brain tell you predictably when to go to bed every night so that you're getting the right amount. And that might be different times at night on different days. On one day, if you run a marathon, your brain's going to make you sleepy earlier than usual. But on a rainy, sedentary day where you mostly just watch movies on the couch, you might go to bed later than usual because you didn't do as much physical work, right? So listen to your body, trust that intuition, because that intuition is not just a guess. That intuition is actually a sophisticated set of algorithms that your brain is automatically tuning. And it's honed by millions of years of evolution. So it's a more accurate and more precise set of algorithms than anything you can buy on the market in terms of your, like sleep tracker device. Okay, so that's figuring out how much sleep you need. But all of this assumes that you can sleep until a time in the morning that um, that allows you to sleep enough. But what if you're actually more of a night owl? So this is where the concept of chronotype comes up. So before I go ahead, I'm seeing there's some questions in the chat. Okay, very good questions about REM sleep, dreaming, waking up tired every day. Okay, we are definitely going to get into all of those things. But to answer Anita's question real quick, what if you wake up tired every day, only an extra hour on the weekends? If you wake up tired, that's different than waking up sleepy. So if you're waking up and you feel like you really need to get back to sleep, that's either you're not getting enough sleep, or what we're about to see on this slide here is that you might not be sleeping at the right time. So for example, so your chronotype is your biologically predisposed time to fall asleep or to wake up. So this is genetically hardwired that you might be an early bird, for example. And by the way, as we age, as we get older, we tend to become more and more of a early bird. That's called phase advance, as in circadian phase advance. Or you might be born more of a night owl. Or if you're a teenager, you are just hardwired as a night owl. That's just what happens. It's not your fault. That's just how your brain operates. And early birds get sleepy earlier in the evening and they wake up early in the morning. They couldn't sleep in if they tried. Night owls tend to stay up later. They get a rush of energy in the evening. That's when they might be most social and creative, and they have a really hard time waking up in the morning because their brain just still thinks it's nighttime. Now, what do you do if you are waking up feeling sleepy every day and you feel like, okay, but I gave myself enough opportunity to sleep. Why am I still waking up sleepy? One, you could have a sleep disorder that's not giving you good quality, so that you're not getting good quality sleep. That's why you're waking up tired and sleepy. Or you might be a night owl trying to live as a morning person. So then what do we do? How do we shift the timing of our circadian clock so that our biology matches our obligations in the real world, whether it's life or family, right? Or work or family or life. Okay, so what we do is use light. When we give ourselves light exposure, it shifts our circadian timing. It shifts when our brain thinks it's daytime versus nighttime. So if you expose yourself to bright light in the evening, then you're going to fall asleep and wake up later if you do that consistently. If you expose yourself to bright light in the morning consistently, and bonus points if you also have sunglasses or blue light blocking glasses in the evening, then you feel sleepy earlier in the morning and you can wake up earlier in the morning. So that's how we use light to shift our biologically predetermined kind of chronotype so that we can function in our life better. Okay, so any questions about that so far, of getting to know your sleep, knowing how much sleep you need and what timing of sleep is best for you? By the way, if you don't know what your chronotype is, here's how you figure it out. An easy thought experiment. If you were on vacation for, let's say, a month or 2 months, or if you're retired and you don't have any particular obligation at any time of day, and there's no one to judge you, including yourself, you won't judge yourself, what timing would you naturally fall into with your sleep? Would you naturally go to bed earlier because you're already yawning and like sleepy before you usually go to bed and just start the day at 4 a.m., 5 a.m.? Or would you much rather indulge in the evening, being awake and doing things, and sleep in later into the morning? So that gives you an idea of what your chronotype is. Yeah, so Rachel's an early bird. Yep. Good for you, because society is designed for early birds. It certainly makes things easier. All right, so that's getting to know your sleep. The second bucket for our tips on how to be a better friend to sleep is to be flexible. Because to be a good friend, you can't say my way or the highway, you know? Oh, and Liberty says, what if we don't feel like either early or night? Perfect. You're conventional. You're in the middle. That makes life even easier. Okay, so let's be a flexible friend. How do we do that? Well, first thing to realize is that sleep is already a very flexible friend to us. Sleep is very good at adapting to our needs. Like I mentioned earlier, those, millions of years honed algorithms in our brains are working hard to figure out how much sleep we need and what stages of sleep we need and what proportion and in what sequence based on things like how much physical and social activity we've had recently, what our reproductive status and hormones are. Like, are we going through puberty? Are we pregnant? Are we postpartum? Are we going through perimenopause or menopause? At these different stages of life, our body's needs are different, right? So sleep listens to those needs and adjusts accordingly. Also, are we going through something emotionally difficult right now in our life? What sorts of nighttime therapy does our REM sleep need to do for us? What did we learn recently? Do we learn a physical task or did we learn how to conjugate French verbs? Right? Do we live in northern climes and southern climes? What's the weather like? What is the season? What is the season not just of the year but of our life? Are you ill? Are you injured? Are you recovering from surgery? And also, of course, how old are you? Right? Because at different ages, our bodies and our brains have different jobs. When we're going through puberty, we're getting ready to grow, to blossom, to learn all kinds of things, for our bodies to go through a dramatic, reproductive changes. And when we're going through menopause, our body's needs are different, right? So when we think about these changes that we go through throughout our life, we have to recognize that sleep is doing us a favor by changing alongside it. So just because our sleep is different now than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, doesn't necessarily mean that sleep is worse. So for example, one of the most common uh, times and sort of issues that trigger sleep that I get from my patients is menopause and perimenopause. In fact, most of my patients are women between 40 and 60-ish, I would say. That's because during this time, it's just one of the most volatile times during our life in terms of our hormonal change and physical change. For example, estrogen. We all know that estrogen is an important reproductive hormone that changes during perimenopause, right? That it's declining over time as we get closer to menopause. Now, what we might not know, what you might not have heard, is that estrogen is also just an overall really important hormone for regulating the whole brain. In fact, it's known as the CEO of the brain. It interacts with every neural pathway, every system in the brain, and many systems in the body. So part of its job is to simply keep things like even Steven, keep things sort of mellow and under control. And what happens during perimenopause is not just that estrogen is declining over time, even day to day, hour to hour, estrogen is fluctuating very dramatically. So that's why we have things like, hot flashes, because estrogen also works with the parts of the brain that control body temperature, right? So when estrogen is all over the place, our body temperature is all over the place. And our moods can also be really affected. That's why there's many experiences of mood swings and higher emotional reactivity. And sometimes, more worry and more anxiety and more, difficulties with sort of runaway thoughts or runaway worries. And that's also part of why you have those racing mind kind of experiences at night. So, all of that being said, sleep is, of course, going to be disrupted by all of these changes because our whole body system and our cognitive and emotional systems are more volatile. But does that necessarily mean that all of the changes are bad? For example, one of the most common things that happens during perimenopause and menopause sleep is more fragmented sleep, as in waking up more often. And here, I bet a lot of you are going to recognize this. I can fall asleep, but I wake up during the night and I can't get back to sleep, right? Yeah, type into the chat if this resonates with you, because this is one of the most common things I hear. And people are often very worried about this because, oh, yes, yes, with exclamation marks, totally with exclamation marks, all caps, yes, 100% yes. Yeah, this is very, very, very common. Um, and I think this is really worrisome for many people because When we think of good sleep, like if I ask you to bring to mind a really ideal night of sleep, I bet what you're thinking of is uninterrupted, let's say 7 to 8 hours, right? That's called monophasic sleep. Monophasic sleep just means sleep in one solid chunk. But you know what? You know who didn't and doesn't do monophasic sleep? Like humans before the Industrial Revolution. Because in pre-industrial times, we used to do biphasic sleep. This is what it looked like. We would go to bed probably earlier than most of us do nowadays, sleep for a few hours, then be up for an hour or two, like not just laying in bed, tossing and turning for an hour or two, getting up out of bed to rise bread, to visit neighbors, to sing songs, to do chores, like actually living life for a couple of hours, and then going back to bed for their second sleep. So that middle of the night awakening that you experience, yes, Rachel, that 3 a.m. awakening, that's not just a fluke. That's biologically built in. That's an intermission in a normal night of sleep that used to just be the norm in our sleep architecture. Uh, and there's a good biological reason for that because the first half of your night and the second half of your night are qualitatively different. It's not just sleep split into two. The first half of your night is basically mostly almost all non-REM sleep. So all of your deep sleep happens during this time. It's like deep sleep with a little bit of REM sleep. It's mostly, your body taking care of itself physically, because that's what deep sleep does. And the second half of the night is mostly REM sleep and light sleep going back and forth. This is where you're getting your biggest chunks of REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and this is a stage of sleep that really works on the emotion regulation, the memory consolidation, and together with the light sleep is called light, which I don't think is really fair because it actually is really important. Half of the night should be light sleep, and it does things like helps you practice the skills that you learn during the day. So both halves of the night are important, but they're qualitatively different. Kind of like whole grains versus protein, for example. Both types of nutrition really important, but qualitatively different. So it's natural for there to be an intermission in the middle of the night. And by the way, lots of people in the world still do this. In different cultures, people will get up at about 2 or 3 a.m., like on purpose, to meditate, to do yoga, to pray, just following this sort of more traditional uh, shape of sleep that human biology naturally likes to do. So if you are in perimenopause or menopause and your brain is doing this, it's not sleep breaking down. It's sleep reverting to an ancient shape that it was kind of meant to take anyway. So embrace biphasic sleep. That's sleeping in two chunks at night. Um, but one thing I will say is that if your sleep is really fragmented, like you're waking up really often, many times during the night, or you're snoring and you don't realize you're waking up, but someone is telling you that's happening, do get screened for sleep apnea. And I especially emphasize this for my women patients and audience members because you know what? The mainstream screening criteria for who should be sent for a sleep study is very male coded. So even medical professionals tend to view sleep apnea through that lens of, men over the age of 50, 55 who are overweight, right? So many younger women, women in general, and especially women who are, not necessarily overweight, get overlooked. That's why women are 3 times as likely to go undiagnosed for sleep apnea. So definitely, if you're even on the fence about it, it's really important to ask for that referral, right? Because that really will fragment your sleep a whole lot more than into biphasic sleep. And it's a big burden on your heart and brain. So that's my PSA, most important PSA for today. Okay, let's make sure we get to some other important points about being a flexible friend, which is finding the true culprit for your fatigue. Earlier we talked about being tired, feeling fatigued, but what I didn't mention is that fatigue is different from sleepiness in another way, in that If you are sleepy during the day, that means you didn't sleep enough last night or didn't get good enough quality sleep. But if you're tired during the day, these are more likely to be the reasons: sedentariness or chronic pain, feeling stressed or overwhelmed, dehydration, overstimulation. Even if you're, scrolling your phone with for like good, happy content about puppies and babies, that is still a lot of stimulation. Or maybe you're just bored. You're feeling lonely and isolated, and you haven't seen your friends or haven't done anything interesting for a while, right? And maybe haven't done anything inspiring for a while. These factors are more likely to be the culprit of your fatigue and your nighttime insomnia. All right. And last but not least, let's be generous to sleep. That's our last bucket for how to be a good friend to sleep today. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, realize that sleep is already generous to you. Sleep is so resilient so that if you do want to or need to pull an all-nighter or late-nighter to get work done, or if you need to take care of a baby or another family member, if you want to catch up on your favorite show sometimes, like I do that. Sometimes I stay up past my usual bedtime to watch a really good HBO show. Or if you want to travel to vacation to see your family, you want to celebrate and have some alcohol, that's okay. You don't have to be a perfect monk and perfect with your sleep hygiene to have a good relationship with sleep, because sleep is very generous and resilient to you. You're more adaptable than you probably think. If we do those things in moderation and also give back to sleep, right? And the way that we can give back to our friends' sleep to really nurture that relationship and give sleep the required TLC to be sustainably happy and, healthy in this relationship of ours are some really good daytime things you can do. One, light exposure. Don't sit in your house all day, even if you have big windows. You do have to get outside and get in real sunlight. Or if you really can't get out because of mobility limitations, or your area is just really dark in the winter, a light box might be good for you as long as your healthcare provider okays it, because there are some contraindications. For example, if you have seizures or some eye problems or bipolar disorder. But yeah, one way or another, get bright light exposure for at least 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day. Even better if you go for a long walk outside. That's double whammy. Speaking of walking, exercise, especially resistance exercise and strength training. That's like the biggest bang for your buck in terms of getting more sleep and more deep sleep, because sleep is really just recovery from what happens during the day, right? So if you didn't use your body much during the day, there's nothing to recover from. But if you really worked out your body and, leaned into using your body, then your body has something really worthwhile to recover from. And sleep will adjust to accommodate that. And last but not least, true mental rest. Now, I don't mean collapsing on the couch and just vegging out watching TV for 3 hours. That's not really restful, because your brain is still processing all that information and stimulation, and you're not getting true rest. What true rest looks like is paying attention to your breath, getting out of your body, or getting out of your head, sorry, and into your body. Instead of strategizing and planning and thinking about your to-do list and ruminating, let's get into our senses. Let's really taste that strawberry that we're eating, instead of just popping it in our mouth. Let's really get tactile, feel that gardening tool in our hand as we're gardening. Let's really smell the air and feel the texture of our clothes and feel the breath in our lungs and feel the movement in our rib cage and in our bellies as we breathe. When we get ourselves into our bodies in this here and now kind of way, we are letting go of mental stress. And when we get that true rest, throughout the day, even in little pockets, I promise that will help you sleep, because the message you're sending to your body is, hey, everything's safe. You can sleep now. All right, so let's come back to Marcy and see how she's going to amend her sleep rules now that she knows how to be a good friend to sleep, how to get to know her sleep, be flexible, and be generous, right? So first, we're going to go with sleep vibes, because we're going to roll with changes and kind of, trust our intuitions. She's gonna watch some cozy TV and talk to her friends on her phone and maybe watch a little YouTube yoga, after bed, after dinner. She's gonna go to bed a little later because she realized she's not a 9:30 bedtime person. She's a little bit more of a night owl. And instead of locking down her evening to be totally, just boring, she's going to socialize. She's going to go back salsa dancing on Thursdays. And she's going to keep her bedroom to comfortable degrees, whatever that might mean on that particular night. And she's going to listen to her own sleepy cues. And if she wakes up in the middle of the night, she's going to read a book and enjoy it. So basically, instead of sleep hygiene, she's going to be a good friend to sleep. So on that note, I would like to invite you to consider how are some, what are some ways you want to improve your relationship with sleep? Please take your time to brainstorm, type your questions and your thoughts about how you want to improve your relationship with sleep into the chat. And while you do that, while you brainstorm, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for your attention today. And I would super appreciate it if you could give me some feedback. I'm always trying to learn, how I can do better. So you can use this QR code or go to the link that is on your screen right now. And at the end of that survey that asks for your feedback on my performance today, you're going to get a link to a PDF, a workbook that's free for you called A Quiet Mind for Better Sleep. And I made that workbook specifically to dive into even more detail about how to calm that busy brain. So again, thank you very much for your attention. And thank you, Kendra, for dropping that link into the chat. And yeah, let's see what questions or thoughts we have. Don't stress about waking up at night from Sharon. I love that. That's a really big one, and it can really do wonders. Cup of herbal tea and shut off the phone and TV 30 minutes before sleep. I like that, Dane. That gives you a chance to get out of your head and into your body, sort of take that gentle slope down towards sleep. That's a very good, welcoming thing to do for your friend's sleep. You're very welcome, Natalie. That's a very kind feedback from you. Go to bed when I'm sleepy from Vanessa. I love that. Dane, I'm not sure what you're saying about the hot that is. Maybe that's a typo. We can come back to you if you want to retype that. Let's see. Amy says letting go of the rigidity is big. Yes. While my sleep routine does work for me, it often feels rigid. That's a really good notice. So maybe right now it works great, but maybe one day it needs to flex, it needs to change. Maybe it'll get earlier or later or different somehow. But yeah, being open to that change is really important. Drink more water earlier in the day. Yeah, I think being hydrated is definitely good for your energy and for just wellness during the day. But I also want to say, don't be afraid to drink if you're thirsty in the evenings. Many people are afraid of drinking too much water in the evenings so that they have to go to the bathroom at night. But going to the bathroom at night is not really detrimental to sleep. That's okay. And in fact, sleep benefits from you being well hydrated. And besides, you're probably using the bathroom at night not because you really need to pee, but more because you're already awake and your bladder's like, why not take this opportunity to like send up some like, send a message. More movement during the day from Anita. I love that. That's like the closest thing we have to a panacea in medicine, right? Okay, Bernadette says, I learned to be more gentle with myself and sleep and not be so regimented. I love that. Yes, gentleness is a good way to approach yourself and to approach your sleep. Don't stress if I wake earlier than usual from dawn. Yeah, because you know what? Sometimes we wake up earlier because we've gotten enough sleep or because we are in a stage of life now where our chronotype is shifting earlier, and that's okay. Um, I've been doing this for years, 4 hours of sleep most nights from Roxana. I'm sorry to hear that. That's really tough. 4 hours sounds like it's probably not enough, or at least probably doesn't feel very satisfying. So that's a good, I think, if you're for Roxana and anyone else in this situation where you're consistently feeling like you're not getting enough sleep, it's really worth talking to your doctor and asking for a referral for behavioral sleep medicine. This is a pretty niche field, and there's not too many of us working in this field. But, at least ask your doctor about this referral, and maybe there are other resources that they can refer you to if you don't have a behavioral sleep medicine specialist, in your area. And by the way, a lot of us do telehealth now. So I see people all throughout rural New York, for example. So, that's a possibility. So just remember behavioral sleep medicine or sleep psychology. Search that to see what resources you can find. All right. Any tips for a 3-year-old that doesn't go to bed until 2 a.m.? Ooh, that is really late for a 3-year-old. 3-year-olds should be going to bed much earlier than that, like 8 p.m. ish, maybe even earlier. So this kind of depends on whether there's neurodivergence going on, because if the 3-year-old has, for example, like autism or something related, that's possibly part of it, or the bedtime routine or bedroom and bedtime environment in the few hours leading up to in the evening may be too stimulating, or there might be something else going on. So that's a bit complex, and I would recommend talking to a pediatrician or pediatric sleep specialist. And there are really good books too on pediatric sleep. Like Janet Kennedy wrote a really good book called The Good Sleeper. Highly recommend that. And there's a book called Become My Child's Sleep Coach. That's for like 3 to 13-year-olds. Sleep, that's also really good. So look into that. Would you speak to naps during the day, benefits and drawbacks? Yes, very good question, Vanessa. So naps are awesome. I if you are a person who likes naps, by all means do it, but nap responsibly, which means short nap, not over an hour. So ideally more like 30 minutes, maybe set a timer for 45 minutes so you have a little buffer, but you won't oversleep to more than an hour. Because the longer the nap, the more it gets into deep sleep, and that takes away from your nighttime sleep. And you're gonna wake up more groggy from that long nap, and that's not helpful for you. Also, make that nap in the early afternoon, or so, instead of in the late afternoon, or definitely not in the evening, because the later your nap, the more it'll interfere with your nighttime sleep. So yes, excellent question. And if you are the kind of person who can't nap, even if you tried, you can still rest. You can meditate, you can close your eyes and just breathe. That confers a lot of the same benefits as napping, even if you don't fully fall asleep. Okay, see so many patients, Bob says, who are so anxious about sleep that they dread going to bed. Yeah, oh, I feel you. A lot of my patients are like that too. It's and ironically, that dread is, increasing the hyperarousal, increasing, the alertness and the anxiety, and that makes it harder to fall asleep, right? So yes, I think part of developing a good relationship with sleep is to really be accepting and flexible, like about the biphasic sleep pattern, so that it doesn't become a battlefield. So great. Let's say I'm not feeling that. Okay, Roxana only requires 4 hours a night. Okay, great. Some people only need just a tiny bit of sleep. That's rare, but that works. Okay. We okay. Okay. So yeah, read up on the pediatric sleep. There are like very sort of many potential situations going on there, and it's maybe a little too complex to get into for this setting. Power naps, yeah, power naps are like 15, 20-minute naps. Excellent. Love those. If you go to bed and can't sleep, should you get up and try again later or keep trying? Excellent question. And I would say trying is like never the right thing to do, because when you try to sleep, you're kind of pushing sleep farther away. because that increases that's what we call sleep effort, and it increases your anxiety potentially. It increases just the alertness that you have. You're hypervigilant to whether you're sleeping or not. So we're never trying to sleep. When we go to bed, we're simply inviting sleep to come if it wants to come. And if it doesn't want to come right now, then yeah, get up and do something else. Or you can even just sit up in bed and read, or listen to a podcast, or listen to an audiobook, or even watch a little TV, although that's not my favorite option. Um, Instead of trying to make yourself sleep, just do something quiet and enjoyable, and sleep will come to you when it is ready. Um, Using the blue or red glasses before sleep. Um, if you mean blue light blocking glasses, Anna, that could be helpful if you are a night owl. If you're a natural night owl, wearing the blue light blocking glasses in the couple of hours leading up to your bedtime helps to tell your brain that yes, it is indeed nighttime. Start to sort of like go towards the slope of sleep, because the all the lights in our house, our screens, the things that we often the devices we often have in our homes can kind of trick our brains into thinking that it's still daytime when there's a lot of that light exposure in the evening. I mean, usually it's our environmental lights are not quite enough to really make a difference. But if you are already a night owl, it can be helpful to just take the edge off of that light with blue light blocking glasses. But yeah, excellent question, Anna. All right, on that note, yeah, I think that is the end of our time together, but it was so lovely to talk to you all. And I am very grateful for this opportunity. And I really hope that you all develop a really lovely, long-lasting, happy, healthy relationship with sleep. And yeah, please, give me some feedback, but also you can look me up and send a message if you are interested. There's a contact me section on my website. So yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wu. This has been tremendous and lots of great comments, and we'll certainly send out this link as well after the recording and the recording for registering people who registered for this. So thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge and your delivery of that, and answering all of our questions. And we appreciate you, and I'm delighted to have had you.
Thank
Just to
you,
wrap
Anna.
up, we also just our next webinar, Lunch and Learn webinar, will be on April 8th. It's going to be Savor the Season. It'll be the second 2.0 for the springtime. So we'll be covering spring gardening, preserving food, and then also some food safety to consider during the summer season with picnics and barbecues and things. So please look at our website and watch your email also, because we are going to be doing a drawing for several of Dr. Wu, Jade Wu's books. So thank you everyone for sticking with us today, and thank you again, Dr. Wu. You've been tremendous.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.